Okay, so in this video I'm just going to go through creating some stop motion animation using Adobe Premiere Pro. First thing you need to do is create some images for your animations. So these are ones that I created earlier on, and I've just used a little drawing mannequin and we're just moving its arms up and down so you can see. I've got 20 frames here. We're going to set the animation to 10 frames a second, so this is going to be 2 seconds of animation. Now you can do this using whatever your favorite camera happens to be. I've used the camera in the computer. What you need to do is just make sure that the frames are numbered sequentially. So I've got 001 through to 020 here. If you happen to make a mistake and so you go from 6 to 8 and you leave out 7, then it will only import so those first 6 frames. So make sure you have them all sequentially numbered like so. Okay, so let's get Premiere Pro up. So once you've got your images prepared, you can create your project, which I've done here. Now, you may be using a different version of Premiere. They're a little slightly different, but they work pretty much the same. If on your timeline you don't have the tracks that you require, just come into File, so New and Sequence, and we get the ability to create a new sequence. What I suggest you go for is AVC HD. And look, if you want to do a professional animation, you can go for 1080p if you like. Otherwise, I'd recommend going for one of these 720p sizes. They're just as good for most of what we're doing. So select that. You can name your sequence if you like. I'm going to leave it at sequence 2. Click on OK, and we get our sequence things there with our video track and audio. Now, the next step is to import our images. So let's go to File and Import. And let's just pop down to our desktop. And the images are here on the desktop. Now, just be careful. If I select the first one, you'll notice what happens is I get numbered stills popping up here, and I can select that. And that will import all the stills that I have here that are numbered sequentially. Just be careful. Sometimes what we want to do is say select them all, thinking that we're actually going to be importing our sequence. Now, the way that Premiere works means that what we're going to import here is actually a collection of individual frames, which is not what we want. What we need to do is, if we just deselect these and select the first one that you want to import, okay? Don't select any others, just the first one. Select numbered stills, and that gives us what we're after. We now click on Import, goes and imports the files for us. Where are we? And we have them here named 001 JPEG, which isn't a particularly useful name, but that's what we've got. If we right click on that, we can then go on Modify and select Interpret Footage. And we're going to change the frame rate. I said earlier on we're going to be using 10 frames a second. So the first one says use frame rate from the file, which is 25 frames a second. I actually want to assume this frame rate, which is going to be 10 frames a second. So if I select that and put a 0 in there, 10 frames a second, that's all good. Click on OK, and we're fantastic. All I need to do now is to drag and drop this into my main video track, and we have the video up here on the screen. If it's a different size, if it's not sitting in the frame properly, just go and right click, and you've got a few options there. And actually, I don't have the option to scale. You may have the option to scale in your version. Let me just make sure that I've actually got that. Hang on a sec. Let's just make sure I've got that selected. Scale to frame size. So if you have problems with the size, you can scale to frame size. The other option is to actually click on here and you can drag and change the size like so, although you might have trouble with later versions. So now that we've got that in there, all we need to do is hit play and you'll see that we have our animation, which is great. That's what we're after. So once we've got the animation, that's all good. What we can do then is then export the animation. To do that, simply come up and say File, Export, Media. Now let's just have a look at a couple of settings here because these are important. Now we want it to be in QuickTime format. You can change those formats. So QuickTime gives us a .mov extension. There are a number of different formats in there if you want to save it as something else. I'm going to leave it at QuickTime. And we've got a preset there, which PAL-DV. I'm actually going to go and change some of these. So let's pop down here to our video section. And I'm actually going to change this. We can't really see that, can we? If I click on here, it's going to be out of frame, but I'm going to select H264, okay, because that's the HD format that I want. Now, if I slide down, let's have a look at what else I've got. I've got the width and height. That is fine. I'll leave it at that. Anything else I want to change there? And I don't want to change the frame rate. Let's leave it back at 25. Thanks anyway. And I think those basic settings are fine. I could come in here and change the frame rate as long as this button is selected. Okay, that maintains the aspect ratio. So I can just change one of these numbers, and the aspect ratio remains the same. So now if I hit export, sorry, the other thing is I can go and change the name here as well. So if I click on that, it gives me the option of actually changing that name. So let's just call it my stop motion 01, and it's going to save it in this particular folder. So let's hit save. And then we go export. And with any luck, if we go and have a look in our folder, we find my motion StopMotion.1.mov, and if I go and double click on that, it'll open it up in QuickTime. We'll close that one, and I can play my animation. And again. So that is a very quick video on how to create some stop motion animation using Adobe Premiere.